What is up, everyone, and welcome to another wild week of Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm your host today, and I'm honestly just vibing at this point because what the heck is going on?
Same. I feel that a lot. What's up, y'all? It's Bryan. I just came out of watching Toy Story in theaters. Most of you probably don't know that I am like the hugest Toy Story nerd on the planet. And with that being said, I now feel my life is complete. So I'd like to say thank you for everyone involved in this adventure.
Hi guys, it's Emily. I did not watch Toy Story today, but I constantly feel like alternating characters from that particular film. Today I feel like Slinky.
All right, well, on that note, so right back into the... Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we do pick right back up where we left off with the gut punch. Reminder of Rico taking a bullet through the head. Rip. Right? I'm just saying, rip. Right? I don't know. I don't know what to expect in this show at all. I feel like people die and are fine. I feel like people are dying or dead, whatever. And we get a nice little reminder of that, and then our Geto versus Toji fight ensues. I do have to say, I think this is my favorite fight of JJK thus far, with Geto's curse technique and Toji's, cool calmness. The vast, backdrop. They were in these, buildings within another building. The emotions behind everything, of course, because Geto thinks that Gojo is dead at this point. So what did you think of this fight as a whole, being animated, as especially for you guys manga readers?
Again, this show just, really benefits from being animated, or this story, I should say, benefits from being animated, because the manga moves at lightning speed because it has to, and so not that this slows it down, but it just makes everything feel a little bit more fluid and just really shows how terrifying these people are, how tough they are to go up against each other. And we've already seen that Toji is a force to be reckoned with, right? Because Gojo got wrecked in the last episode, and we know that he is the strongest, other than Geto. And the thing about Geto that I think gives him a slight advantage in a fight with Toji is that he is more level-headed. He is, his predisposition is just more calm and a little bit less cocky than Gojo. So even though he clearly is losing it at this point, for him, it's still measured and calculated in his response, and he's very pragmatic about it and just jumps right to the rage stage of grief, right? But I mean, this fight was so cool because Toji is such a badass and again is still fighting without any technically jujutsu sorcery, and then you have Geto, who has this cursed energy manipulation that he's able to use. And it's really interesting to see the interaction as well with Toji's his little cursed spirit that he does have slight control over, and the explanation also of how he was able to get in and he's I was able to condense it small enough so that I can just swallow it and then heave it back up.
Ew. I was I didn't
sneak it in. me bringing contraband candy into the movie theater.
No.
That's not true. That is libel. But I don't know. It's just it's such a cool fight. I love the animation of the dragon. It's giving very Haku from Spirited Away, but much deadlier. Yeah, I don't know. This was a really interesting fight to watch because going into it, I was not sure who might come out on top because both of them are very level-headed about this. Toji coming from a place of earned confidence, and then Geto just being incredibly intelligent. This is a very well-balanced fight.
Yeah, this fight was very interesting to watch, specifically because the way that it turned from Geto realizing that everything he just tried to work for does not mean anything, right? So we're starting there, and then all of a sudden Toji's yeah, by the way, your buddy's dead. And then he's Soka. And then just goes off with his dragon. First off, his dragon is, his ultimate move. That's, one of his trump cards, if you will. So he's pulling that out on, phase one of a fight. You know it means something. So that was really interesting. Now, with kind of Toji just showing up out of nowhere and being like, all right, cool, it doesn't matter now, my job's done. It definitely gives you the sense of almost like callousness, because everything else that's going on no longer matters. He's like, I did my job, I'm ready to hop out, like go home, get some dinner. Thinking about how there were like almost like no afterthoughts of any repercussions definitely tells you the type of person he is. It makes it very difficult to grasp where his empathy starts, if any applicable. We've talked about how he is quite menacing and just a menace in general. Now you're really starting to see those behaviors come out with this fight, because there is just execute the plan, infiltrate the dealer, find the supplier. Thank you, 21 Jump Street, for that reference. And it's just a really interesting kind of contrast to most other villains that you see, right? Usually there's like a purpose behind their like grand evil scheme. However, that's not the case here. He literally is just like doing his job, which was to kill Rico. So very interesting. I did like the OST of this scene. I found it very cool. I thought that it was very contemporary and fitting for the fight scenes of JJK. I think they're doing a really great job with that, because the piano was a little bit more laid back, but you could hear in the chords itself the way that the harmonies were aligned. They were still giving dissonance rather than like pure like flow and harmony of it. So it was a very interesting way to set the fight, or the tone of the fight.
Yeah, I agree with everything both of you said. I thought this fight was just really well done. And a very interesting dynamic too, because as I've mentioned, every fight that we've seen, at least with Gojo, I know up until now, like this arc, we haven't really seen Geto fight that much. I'd have to rewatch JJK 0 and Season 1 again to like remind myself, because it's been a minute. We haven't seen a ton of him, but we've seen a lot of Gojo, and every time we've seen Gojo fight in the future, he's still very cocky, but not as cocky as he is as a high schooler now. So I've been saying, you know, like all of their fights have been very just like, easy. Like we don't even see the fight because it's so clear that they beat out the enemies so fast. But now we're in this stage where it's like all of a sudden we're getting clapped by Toji. Geto has a few like great moments in this fight, but he is getting clapped by Toji, really. I have to say his little finger guns using that as like bullets was really freaking cool, but it didn't really help. Toji was still surprising him left and right. It had me on the edge of my seat, because I was like, I really don't know, you know, what's going to happen here. And it doesn't end well. You know, Geto thinks he can absorb this curse from Toji, but he can't. And that kind of was one of those moments where I was just kind of like, is that going to be explained why he couldn't? We'll see. And that leads to his defeat. You know, that catches him off guard enough that Toji is able to kind of slice him up for a moment. Not good. But he doesn't kill him, which I thought was interesting. However, he did mention that, like, killing him might, you know, release everything that he's absorbed thus far, and Toji was like, I don't want to deal with that. So the reason he didn't kill him was kind of a lazy reason, in my opinion. Goes along with his character. But also found it interesting because we have established that Geto and Gojo are the most powerful, so you would think that he would want to kind of kill three birds with one stone in this situation. So interesting that he walked away from that. I didn't see it coming, but what did you think of this situation and how it's going to affect our characters, like, present day?
I think this is where it really starts to form the people we see in Season 1, because they're starting to realize what true dangers are out there, even from non-Jujutsu sorcerers. With that being said, Geto not being able to absorb the curse was specifically because Toji was fast enough to stop him from doing it. Like, he literally whipped around, was able to stop him from doing it. That's why it didn't happen. I did find it was a very interesting dynamic that they created with the scene of this playing out, because you saw the two of them, like, walking between these two hallways and, like, keep missing each other with the windows, which I thought was very interesting, because it almost gave you, like, the hunter and the prey kind of vibes, which was really cool. Now, both of them getting clapped by Toji, unfortunately, I mean, as a manga reader, I saw it coming because I knew it was going to happen, but also it makes a lot of sense that someone who is in contrast to the two of them, supposed to be like a monkey of like non-Jujutsu sorcerer power, because they are the strongest, they have that contrasting element of not suspecting someone who isn't like them to be able to beat them. And I think that's where this lesson comes in, is that you need to be on your guard no matter who your enemy is or what powers they have, because the second you let go or set back, you're going to get your cheeks clapped.
I love that you brought up the monkey reference, Bryan. I'm going to jump into that a little bit deeper because it's a really interesting choice of words. Geto, in the present tense of this story, has been introduced to us as a villain. And we are seeing the past now, and it's clear that that's not the case at whatever state his mind is currently in. But Toji says to him specifically, even a monkey like me with no jujutsu sorcery powers can beat you two who are like the strongest, which is true so far at this point. And in the future, as Geto is introduced as this like very self-righteous villain, he specifically uses that same terminology where he says like, we just need a world of jujutsu sorcerers, we don't need monkeys who can't use it. So you might be able to attribute this fight with Toji to the beginning of his descent into villainy, being humiliated in this fight, in addition to, at least at this moment, knowing that his best friend in the world has died at the hands of this monster. It could be enough to drive anybody insane. So it's very interesting how much those particular words stuck with him. As for Gojo, we obviously know Gojo has made it into the present tense as well. For me, I think that probably there's going to be some more that we see a little bit later in the episode, maybe in the coming episodes, but like, as bad as Geto's reaction was to lose Gojo, even though he is cocky, I think would feel very similarly to lose Geto. And what's worse about this is that in some capacity, we know that like he's losing Geto in a different way. It's like he's not necessarily dying in this particular fight, but if he's going to descend into a state of villainy, then he's losing the person that Geto currently is. So both of them have the entire trajectories of their lives changed by this moment. It's a critical fight for sure.
Yeah, and it's like I've been saying, they needed to be humbled, so I think that this fight is really what changes the two of them as a whole. And I like that you called out the monkey thing, because I didn't remember he specifically uses that wording in season 1 in present day, but I do remember him kind of being about living in a world with just jujutsu sorcerers. And I was thinking about that as I was watching this, and I was thinking maybe this whole situation with Toji is really what set him off into being in this situation where he chooses villainy. You kind of see the reason behind it, and you can't fully blame him. You know, it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, obviously we don't agree with his actions in present day, but you can understand why he chose to go down that path. We've talked a lot about villains choosing to go down certain paths because of something that happened to them, and I can see that theme here, so it's really interesting. I'm really excited to... We only have one more episode of this arc, so I'm very interested to see how episode 5 is going to go. I'm kind of worried, but we do move on to Toji delivering Riko's body to the Star Religious Group, where they offered to pay a bonus, and then they explain that like they would pay anything to stop the assimilation. They're very, very, very dedicated to their cause. But something I found interesting was the man specifically mentioned that he was aware that stopping this assimilation could be dooming mankind, and yet they are still committed to the cause. Why do you think this group has so much conviction, even though it could mean the end of humanity? Because I was scratching my head.
How to answer this question without getting canceled?
Oh no.
Well, I mean, here's my honest answer. There are a number of world religions on this planet, and most of them have people who range from like the moderate end of the scale to then like fanaticism. The fanatics can be really scary, and I think that this is probably a parallel to that. Obviously, you know, we don't deal in, as far as we know, we don't deal in our modern world with like jujutsu sorcery or anything similar to that, but the assimilation is perceived by these fanatics in the show as something that would like taint their god. Essentially, Tengen Sama is viewed as a god to this religious group, and they feel that like maybe this like mortal human girl if she were to absorb, or like he were to absorb her, it would like impurify the god, because you're like tainting it with a human being. You know, we don't necessarily experience a lot of religious beliefs quite like this, at least in the Western world, but something you might be able to compare it to a little bit could be like people who refuse to believe in like science because they feel that like their god has created a perfect world, and it's like best not to question like divine construction of things. You know, like scientists and some of the developments that they've made to like maybe improve upon some of the like I don't know, like the thing that's coming to mind for me first is like global warming. This is the thing that's going to get me canceled. but the point is, like, obviously you have like two ends of the spectrum that like there's like a lot of like documented proof that if you don't do something, there's going to at some point be some kind of like almost supernova situation that's going to spiral out of control, and that's what's happening like with Jujutsu Kaisen. If Tengen-sama does not get a new vessel to contain himself, it's going to result in the end, but they don't care. They're like, what they say is like, we'll go down with our god if it comes to that, and like there's no greater privilege than being able to go with him. We'd sooner do that than have him be not pure anymore. So I think it's because they're religious fanatics is the long answer, and there's not necessarily a whole lot more justification to it other than that it's like what they believe and have a lot of conviction in and would lay down their lives for it.
There's a lot to tackle in this question, and I don't care if I get canceled or not. Just don't cancel Hashira Half Hour. You can cancel me personally, just don't cancel Hana or Emily. They are two precious treasures that need to be protected at all costs. However, myself, I am fair game, so keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, this is a really good parallel to the real world. With that, you know, you think of things like Helter Skelter, like cults, to a certain extent. That's really what this is at this point, right? Those who are so invested in a belief that it clouds their judgment and clouds their ability to see reason, destroys all empathy for anyone else who doesn't believe the same way. I mean, even present day, there are still cults. Like, I read an article last week, like, this is awful, but there's a cult that's in, I believe, South Africa that is forcing people to starve to death, that they must starve to be with God in order to be fully pure before they can go to heaven. People have started to like fall to traps like that because they believe that this is the righteous cause, whether it's due to, you know, a specific leader trapping them into this belief system, or it's a lack of connection to those around them and getting isolated. There's a lot of things that lead individuals to then come to these collective beliefs of what seems to be, in their point of view, the right thing to do. However, when it's viewed on the outside, it's something that's quite horrifying. And so, realistically, this is just a reflection. Life imitates art, art imitates life. And unfortunately, this is one of the more sad reflections that we have to look at and see, you know, where do we as the outsiders play in this role of these people not feeling or not understanding the consensus at play. And it's really sad. Now, for the Star Religious group, I mean, they just fall into that category as people who, unfortunately, have this view that they believe is right at the expense of the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of real-life cults are kind of like that, where you believe what you believe so righteously that everything else falls to the wayside, even if it's, like, the safety of humanity, you know? I think there's a lot of different parallels we can, even in America, say, like, that people are upholding their beliefs over the safety of children and over the safety of women. And I won't get too deep into, you know, that, but it is definitely a very real thing. And it was a very interesting scene. You know, this is one of those scenes in this episode that isn't jam-packed with a lot of stuff like most of the others, but it held a lot of opportunity for those conversations to open up and opportunity to kind of talk about things like that in the real world. And I think that's something that Jujutsu Kaisen does a very good job at, is opening up those conversations. That being said, I found it interesting. Obviously, Toji's kind of a lone wolf. I think we've kind of established that from the beginning. He's just a Jujutsu sorcerer killer, but he really doesn't seem to care. He just wants to get paid. And that's almost like being convicted to a cult. I think like money can be considered a cult, that you're willing to give up humanity just for the sake of money. was pretty interesting. Moving on, we get this nice surprise. I say surprise because this is in the past. We obviously know Gojo is alive, but it definitely surprised Toji. And this is one of the first times I can think of where his cool demeanor was broken. He is shook. He shooketh. Gojo is alive. It turns out, and please feel free to fact check me. I really am going to explain it in very basic terms, but it seems as if he turned his negative energy into positive energy, which allowed him to survive on the brink of death. That's the best I could come up with. It kind of makes sense with his abilities, I guess. If you want to explain it more, feel free. But this Gojo is different. As Toji says, and I have to say this made me laugh, was he said he's high. Thoughts on this?
Like, oh, dude, I'm high off Jujutsu energy.
Wait,
What?
why is this the first time we are hearing your Shaggy impression?
I was thinking of the guy from SpongeBob, though. The
Oh, yes. The surfer.
yes. Okay, yeah, so he is definitely on a high. Now, taking a step back to actually explain it, right? So, the way that they explained it in the show was based off of the math principles. So, when you have a negative number, a negative integer, you multiply that negative integer by another one, you get a positive number as the result. So, that is the concept that they're using here, that this negative energy, and you can think of that as like dark matter. So when you multiply that, it resonates into positive physical matter that then can be used to create an imaginary, or they represented it as an imaginary mass, which then can be manipulated into regeneration of Gojo's body. It's a lot more complex than Demon Slayer, where you just breathe and then flames come out of your sword. Very different. And now, looking at the state Gojo's in, of course, if you literally just figured that out on the brink of death, I mean, who wouldn't be riding a high being like, oh shit, I almost died, but I like figured out how to further control my power. I mean, we've seen a lot of anime characters pull some weird stuff out of their back pocket, and then all of a sudden they're turning the fight around. So I think this is one of those moments. I really was very stunned when I think it was Toji who said, I think our fight's just beginning. And he's like, so it is. And that was really cool because it was Toji acknowledging that he was like, oh, I thought I was done, but this guy is a little bit more intense than I was thinking.
This is such a cool comeback moment for Gojo. Yeah, he is like high or like drunk on power because he's just cheated death. For one thing, which is like, I can only imagine what that must feel like. I don't even know that I could put a word to it, but I think his reaction is well within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
He's like experiencing enlightenment almost. He's not only cheated death, but now it's like he's like describing like everything has become like more clear to me. I understand how to use this power that I was born with or like blessed with. And a resurrection's always interesting in any media. There are certainly some religious texts that we could point to. There are plenty of like fictional media as well, but resurrections aren't reserved for just anybody. So this is clearly, as we already knew, a very, very powerful character, but I think we're about to see the true full extent be unleashed and maybe in a kind of uncontrolled way. We know he's more balanced, he's more mature, slightly, in the future, but this is still a high school boy who's experienced this resurrection, this enlightenment, and now is like truly bestowed with the full extent of whatever this awesome power is that we're about to see, and it's kind of scary. It's not like I wouldn't call it like a happy resurrection exactly in this moment. He's still not looking so good, and he seems like he's lost it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it shows in Toji's reaction, because like I said, he's been super calm and chill this entire time we've known him, and for the first time he's like, oh. But then even then, he, thinks that he is going to be able to take him on, and Gojo's just crazy, like, has an absolute crazy look in his eyes, it's like he's been awakened. You know, he's always been the most powerful, but now it's like he's the most powerful and the most dangerous because he doesn't even, he says like sorry Rico, but I don't care that you died or something like that. You know, he doesn't care. He's just a living being that's floating in the air and just extremely powerful. And that's incredibly dangerous because you don't know what he's going to do. He could take out Toji and take out the entire city if he wants. And it seems like he might do that, you know? That being said, the fight scene from this is now my favorite fight scene, beating out the fight scene that happened 15 minutes ago. And it was just absolutely beautifully done. While I don't fully understand everything that's going on with Gojo, I'm sure I'll figure it out. I just need to rewatch it a few times. He does have a very different air to him, as we've established. He's just crazy. Toji can feel that. He says he can take on his red and blue techniques, but Gojo pulls out something new, purple. And I'm just using the colors because I know there's more to it, but I don't want to get canceled for just not understanding, so I use the very basics. I feel like me hosting a JJK episode just really shows how much I lack in knowledge about the power structure, but, you know, we'll get there. Someday I'm going to be enlightened and everything's going to fall into place and it's going to be a beautiful day. The OST brought back the piano that I talked about from last episode, and we get the incredible line. This might be one of the most incredible lines in anime that I have heard so far, and that is, "Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the chosen one." Chills? Anybody?
So damn cool, but also like, but very cocky, very like in line, but at the same time it's like, but is he wrong though? Because like, what the hell was that? You know, again, I think that there's like some really interesting parallels here. It does bring me, or it does elicit thoughts of religious texts for me, and you know, there's like a couple like really obvious examples. Like there's a big resurrection in the Bible. In Buddhist texts, there's like a resurrection is like a big part of like, and in like Hindu texts, like rebirth and living again, like this, it's like generally for those who believe in like the upper power, and also for like for like select individuals. Like not everybody's going to get resurrected. He's high on this belief that he has just like cheated death and now has this amazing power, but the difference between him and like all these other people is that he is immediately planning to use it for destruction. And he does. The purple technique is so cool because a few episodes ago we just saw him struggling to use red. He wasn't even able to do that. And so in this fight, he already has used red, and Toji was able to like dodge or like work with it pretty easily. But even Toji is like looking at him in this moment, he's like, something's wrong, which is kind of weird because that's not like, he hasn't really like had second thoughts at any other point in this show. He's just like, he's like, I'm gonna wear him down, like I do know that he's strong, but I can take him. Toji having like this gut instinct was kind of scary because it foreshadowed that something big was about to happen, but we weren't quite sure what. And then Gojo unleashes this, and it's this beautiful secret combination of both the blue and the red techniques. And so it takes like the attraction of blue and the repulsion of red to make like an invisible mass that rushes forward and erases everything in its path. And obviously we know that Toji is in that path. So things are not looking so good for Toji for the first time in all of these fights. And does Gojo maybe earn his right as like a possible deity in this world of JJK? I don't know, but we haven't really seen anything that could come close to competing with purple.
Honestly, this entire scene was god tier. Like, this was an S-class anime scene. I do want to go back a little bit just to correct myself. When I said that there was an imaginary mass created out of the resonation of the negative energy, that was incorrect. I want to correct myself there. It was actually the negative energy resonating created positive energy that was able to heal him. So it wasn't creating imaginary mass. That was purple that I had confused it with. And even as a manga reader, this is still very difficult to understand. And thank the Lord for the JJK Wiki. We praise whoever writes that immediately after the episode. Now, with that being said, I do really want to call out the way that it was animated, the combination of red and blue, because those two drops and the rotation of the camera watching those colors combine was so beautiful. And it was a really cool call out they had made, that having big family name behind your sorcery is difficult because people know about it, right? So people knew about red and blue and how to already counter those. However, purple was something that was within the Gojo family still a secret, so not even some of the other members of that clan knew about it. And that's kind of where he got that instinct from that Emily was mentioning. That was like what he was talking about, was that someone, like, not very many people knew about purple and how to counter it. So that was the issue that came into play, is that he had no idea what he was going up against at that point. And also the way that he, like, kind of shielded himself from, like, Toji's attacks as they were coming in, and as he was just, like, kind of floating in the air. Very cool scene there. And I also just kind of want to mention, like, the birds flying in the background, the sun shining behind him. Like, it very much so gives you, like, angel vibes. And, I mean, the white hair, those, like, bright blue eyes, he really does look like something of a god. And I honestly loved every minute of it. My favorite character got his amazing, like, moment in this episode. He really said Yowaimo right there. Like, no further comments needed.
I don't really have much to add. You guys called out every moment that I was thinking of during this fight as just so well done. The animation was beautiful. Hats off to Mappa, truly doing such an amazing job with this. And I was honestly at a loss for words the first time I watched it. I had to watch it a second time to be able to write anything about it, because I was just like, whoa. So, but like you said, Gojo's kind of like a god. Toji is in a pickle. Purple's headed straight for him. Emily's laughing at my pickle.
Not a pickle.
Toji is in a slight pickle because it seems like he's dead now. Man's got worse than Rengoku, honestly.
Listen, for every donut joke that I've had to suffer and endure through for the last 2.5 years or however long it's been, this man got turned into a crescent fucking moon.
This guy just got assassination classroomed on site.
Yeah, it doesn't look too good. He's missing an arm and like half of his body. I know I can say this as an anime only, but I have heard so much about this man. I'm having a hard time believing that he's actually dead, even though that was clearly, like, there's no coming back from that kind of injury. And also, he died standing up, it seemed. And that was like the close of the episode, sort of, kind of. Yeah, I feel like he's going to show up again.
While we're on the topic of Rengoku, Rengoku's not a character. I mean, he is a character in Demon Slayer now, but he's not actually there for the fight scenes anymore. But is it his actions that have spurred everything since then?
Okay, you got me.
And now we have to reflect, because in these final moments, he's like, my kid's going to get sold in 2 to 3 years to Gojo. Is that the action that sparks everything of the present? That's the question that we get to answer, or we get to see the answer coming after episode 5, or maybe even a little bit in episode 5 as we start with our next arc coming up.
This is true, and this is an important reveal, because this is the moment where, you know, as his life is flashing before his eyes, he has like a brief moment of regret, which is a little hard to buy into because of everything that he's done in the last several episodes, but maybe he's trying to have his little tiny redemptive arc, and then it seems like maybe he did actually willingly forget, but Megumi flashes into his mind, and then we get the reveal in this episode, of course, that Megumi is Toji's son. And we know that Megumi and Gojo are pretty tight-knit as far as like a teacher-student relationship in the future, so it's going to be interesting to see how the ghost of Toji might continue to haunt Megumi in the future, and Gojo, and Geto, for that matter.
Yeah, that was very... I forgot that was like the big reveal of that moment, because I already knew that Megumi was his son because of spoilers. It was like maybe he regretted his actions like many people do when they die, but it was very like, we don't really care, other than the fact that we now know that Megumi is your son, and everything kind of makes a little bit more sense with their relationship, Gojo and Megumi's relationship in the future. So I guess you're right, Bryan. I'm going to say that he is dead. He just is, the character is not done in the show. He won't come back as an alive person in the present day, is what I'm going to assume. But just when you think the episode is over, we get a pretty poignant after credit scene. I have to admit, I literally got up from my computer and thought the episode was over, and then like came back. I had like my coffee or whatever I was doing at that point in time, and I noticed that there was still like 5 minutes left, and I was like, oh, we probably have an after credit scene. And what a scene it was! Gojo is carrying Riko's body while like members of the Star Religious group are clapping and cheering him on. Geto finds him, he's alive, and Gojo asks if they should just kill them all because he really doesn't care. Geto is the one who says like there's no reason to, we shouldn't. I think we're starting to see the fall into where he's at in present day in this scene. I'll admit, as an anime only, I don't really quite understand how important this scene, but I could feel how important it is based off of the way it was done. And I feel like it's just the start of something important.
Oh yeah. We know that Gojo is like very unserious most of the time, and so I think that he is still kind of like high on this power that he has freshly obtained, but I do think he's kidding. I think it's like a sick joke because everyone is, you know, they're all clapping at the demise of like this poor girl, and it's like, and human beings can be really disgusting, and like that's what they are both observing, maybe for one of the first times since they're so young in this episode. And so maybe he's not kidding. Maybe he's reacting, and it's like not a calculated reaction. He's just feeling angry in this moment, but I don't think that he actually was planning on wiping out that entire room of people. I don't think there was like super strong conviction behind that as much as he was just angry in that moment with everything that they've been through. Geto, on the other hand, pauses for a moment when Gojo suggests this, and then when he does answer, it's like very quiet and kind of subdued, and he's like, no, we shouldn't, because it's very important that there's like a reason why, you know, like why we're here, why they're here, and if we are ever gonna kill somebody, there needs to be a reason. I think that he considered it for a minute, a little bit more seriously than probably anything Gojo was actually suggesting. I think Geto was thinking about it, because he's been pushed to a different brink. Also, this is his first time seeing Gojo again since everything has gone down, so I think he's also in a state of like disbelief and just understanding that like what they're up against is much crueler than I think he had realized.
Yeah, with this one, I think it's an interesting piece that we get to see. Now, based off of what we know about the present day, you would think the questions would have been reversed, right? You would think that Geto would be the one invoking that conversation instead of Gojo. I think with Gojo, kind of as Emily pointed it out, he is a little bit more off the wall and less of that like calm, calculated human being. And so this is coming from a place of like pain, but humorous is one way to cope. And I think that's kind of shown in season 1 when he's like animated as like frolicking in a field saying, I'll murder you. So we do kind of see some of those elements arise later on. However, with this in mind, it's very difficult for us to try and connect the dots as to where things are going, and if, you know, really these roles are somewhat reversed right now, how do we get to that end game? Of course, we know some things, but this scene is important because it really does demonstrate where this was something that Geto had considered. He was like, man, fuck it at this point, right? Like, why wouldn't I? Like, what point do I have if I'm gonna stop, or if I'm gonna save all of these people, and like my beliefs were to protect everyone, and the people I've protected are literally trying to end the world.
It is a very interesting scene, to say the least. And you're right, Gojo has always been very like, he's good in season 1, but also he's very just like wild and not necessarily moral with a lot of his thinking. So this could like really be the start of that as well. So it's an interesting scene that I think, like I said, I don't really know the importance of it quite yet, but I can tell that there's something going on that's going to be important in the long run. So it was definitely something to call out. But any final thoughts before we move on to our favorite moments? No? All right. Well, our favorite moments, I will go first, and it's kind of basic of me to say this, but the way it gave me chills, and I see it all over the internet because it's something that people are loving, But Gojo's line that we just recently touched on, throughout heaven and the earth, I alone am the chosen one, and then his using the purple technique for the first time was just chef's kiss. I loved everything about that scene. It was so well done. Again, great job Mappa, great job to the voice actors, great job to everyone, because that was like really spectacular.
My favorite moment here, I was thinking about one of the funny moments where they animated Toji's face a little bit weird, but I don't think that's my favorite moment.
It was hilarious though.
I mean, right? Like, yeah, I just killed some people. But I think actually my favorite moment was something that we really didn't touch on, and I think it was when he was talking to, like, one of the managers of the Star Religious Organization, and he was like, well, why don't we go get dinner with these, like, rich people's money? And he's like, absolutely not. I will literally only talk to you in the following situations, which is at work or in hell. And yeah. I think it demonstrates that even people in this very crazy, off-the-wall space understand what a problem he is and what a problem he can be for others. And I think it definitely just further characterizes who we were dealing with at the time. Now, even though we are uncertain of his future at the moment, there is still a lot of questions that can be raised for a possible return of Toji, or if it's just the impacts of his actions right now that are going to alter the future so heavily that it will be felt even going forward throughout this season.
Toji is definitely critical, and on that note, can I say my favorite moment was him stretching before the Gojo fight? They did not need to do it like that for that long, but they did. But they did.
They did. They knew what they were doing.
They did that for us. They knew. They knew what we were going to become the minute that man was animated on our screens. I'm also going to call out the Gojo fight, and as awesome as the purple moment is, Hannah already touched on it, so I'm going to call out two other, like, slightly smaller moments within the same little bracket of time. I love Gojo's, like, almost internal monologue as he's, like, floating through the sky, and there's, like, destruction and havoc being wreaked, like, and that already has happened all around him, and he's obviously going up against somebody who has just whooped his ass big time, in these last several episodes. And he is like enlightened. He's like floating through the sky, and he is like so at peace with everything that it's really unsettling compared to what happens immediately after. Like how calm he is. So I thought that was really beautiful, really well done, and animated in like a very peaceful but eerie way. Similarly, I also just love the shot of Toji dying, standing straight up. Like, he doesn't fall to his knees, like, he goes out like a boss. So, yeah, that was true in the manga too, but it was just cool to see it again animated.
All amazing stuff. It was a great episode, for sure. Absolutely wonderful. But that's about all the time we have. But we do, of course, as always, have a Taisho era secret. Naturally, since it's my turn and I'm learning Japanese, I thought it'd be fun to throw a little fun Japanese fact your way. But did you know that there is no character in the Japanese alphabet that makes the I sound? Our vowels in Japanese are A, I, E, U, and O. And that just doesn't really change, even if there are two vowels together. It kind of changes, but they actually say both. They just mush it together, so it's pretty interesting. That being said, whenever you see a Japanese name, because technically when we see Japanese names, those are Japanese words that have just been changed to our alphabet so we can read it as English speakers. And I is supposed to be pronounced E. So I'm thinking Inosuke, Zenitsu, Shinobu, Mitsuri. Now, it's easy to say it wrong as English speakers because we just read it as an I sound. And if you do say it without making it E, like, I don't think it's really that big of a deal, but it's a fun little fact. Fun little moment is you got to turn off your English rules when you read a Japanese name because they don't follow English rules, so we can't use those rules. I'll get there. Even I have said Inosuke a lot, even on the podcast, so don't worry about it. But fun fact, I'll eventually get there. And with that being said, that's all for today. So thank you so much for listening in. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment if you want a question answered in a future episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, don't forget to download. You can rate our show, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Hashira Half Hour, or on Twitter at Hashira Half. Sorry, it's not Twitter anymore. It's X.
It's Twitter.
My app changed today, and I was like, no!
Give me back the bird app.
We will continue to tweet on Twitter. Thank you so much for listening in. We're so grateful to all of you who do listen in weekly. It's really special to us. And with that, I will say, umai.
Umai.
Umai.